it's interesting to think that today, 30% of professions didn't exist 20 years ago. And similarly, in 5 to 10 years, they're going to be jobs we can't imagine today. So I'm really curious what my kids will end up doing. I sometimes wonder, will they do medicine, psychology, caring, teaching? These are human-centered jobs we're always going to need, even if the skills evolve. The fact is, I don't know what they'll end up doing, but what I do know as a policymaker is that the future world of work will, for most people, be a world in which they face far more professional transitions. And the key challenge will be, and this is my essential point today, is that we have to put in place the support to help people manage these transitions and navigate their way through. And there are two really important things here. The first is helping them to reskill over a lifelong perspective, and the other is ensuring that they have access to adequate social protection when they find themselves between transitions. Now, these are things that we're working on in the European Union, both through policy and funding. We're also working with national governments because they're the ones with the main responsibility here. And as I say, these issues are recognized globally, and there's a global debate on the future of work. Now, one of the really key pressing priorities is the large number of low-skilled. So in Europe alone, we have almost 70 million low-skilled adults. And these are the ones who are most at risk of their jobs being automated and finding themselves in long-term unemployment and therefore poverty, and poverty easily becomes intergenerational. So we have to act. Then we should have easy and affordable access to reskill when we want to. We should have better foresight so that if you're working in an industry or you have a job that's at risk of being automated, you have a chance to reskill before you lose your job, because once you become unemployed, it's extremely scarring. And if sadly you do lose your job, then you should have access to social protection and adequate support to help you guide you to something new. We need to put in place the support that all our children and all our adult citizens too need to help them navigate their way through these transitions over a lifelong perspective, so that we make the future of work a positive one and not a frightening one. Thank you.
Now, my speciality and where I began with this is the fact that I'm a woman who is in tech. One of these things that up until only a couple of years ago I didn't realize was a specialty or a novelty. In fact, I remember having a road of Damascus moment. I was sent by my company to a conference in the States to talk about the technology that we'd be building, and turned up at a conference where there were 3,500 technical women, and immediately felt at home in a way that I hadn't beforehand, and hadn't even missed or noticed the fact that in many of the meetings at work, I was the odd one out on several counts. For those of you that didn't get that, I was young, black, and a woman in technology. So for me, being that odd one out and not really feeling it was something that, unfortunately, not many get to experience. When we look at those working across STEM, science, technology, engineering, and maths, without the arts for now, when I initially started the Stemettes, 13% of those working in the UK STEM industry were women. At the moment, we're at 21% as a country, but only 17% of those working within technology are women. We've been able to show how STEM actually equals creativity and altruism in a way that curriculums, existing narratives, the Big Bang Theory, the IT crowd have failed to show and portray. And so it's very important that we have women, and we have minorities, those that are currently minorities, but also a diverse set of people innovating and creating and doing these STEM jobs. And so in the next couple of years, as we see algorithms and artificial intelligence take over more and more of our lives, more and more of the decisions that are made, and it's more and more of what we're creating when we are innovating, it's important to make sure that the people building those algorithms are as diverse as the people that will be affected by them. To make sure that the biases that we have in data, because of the way history was, don't reflect and portray and project existing biases and existing discriminatory practices onto what's happening in the future. It's also important to make sure that we build fairness into what's happening, and that we're creating jobs and we are building a workplace that works for all, not just the one powerful minority. So I was asked to talk about what kind of jobs the girls might be doing, and I wanted to leave you with kind of three, but they all are on this theme of coaching, caring, and connecting, which I hope we'll be able to touch on, actually, as we go to our questions. Because as much as the robots might come and take our jobs and might kill us, before then, we still will have the space to be able to do these kinds of roles. So the three that we talk to the girls about when we're getting them to create algorithms, when we're getting them to build, get creative, and eat the free food, here are three roles that we're potentially preparing them for. Highway controller, as we have the rise of autonomous vehicles, we're still going to need to manage those exceptions when human beings are human beings and get in the way maybe of cars or incidents happen. Man-machine teaming manager, we've already heard from Anne about how we'll need to work with the technology and fill in the gaps between what they're doing. And finally, wellness manager/technician. Caring is a really big industry. It's only going to grow the capacity that we as humans have and the space that we have for roles in that industry. And until computers can learn empathy and be able to understand things that we've not yet been able to digitalize, we have all got jobs in that space. I'm going to leave with just a really small anecdote. There are a number of different algorithms that do all kinds of things in our world at the moment. They might classify, they might categorize people, they might help us make decisions. And we feed data into algorithms to be able to do that. Algorithms are very good at judging people and being able to learn about them. So you will have famously seen Cambridge Analytica's, the recent incident started off with, can you tell the personality types of someone from the likes that they have on Facebook? So algorithms are very good at doing that. They're very good at telling whether someone's more likely to reoffend and often outperform judges on that. So they're very good at a lot of things. There are a lot of things that they also aren't great at. And the example I'd like to end on is gaydar. If you give an algorithm a set of data about different people and you ask it to say, is this a woman, is this a man, is this someone that's English or not, X, Y, and Z, it will outpredict you on everything seemingly apart from their sexuality. So it seems that there is something that algorithms haven't quite got yet. Thank you very much.
The first thing I would like to say is don't panic, okay? I've been working in AI, artificial intelligence, machine learning and robotics for about 4 decades, and I'm probably one of the people who's responsible for this wave of unemployment coming, so-called. And I run an organization in the Netherlands called the Foundation for Responsible Robotics, and we deal with all issues of accountability and responsibility in robotics. Now, I'm concerned about AI and unemployment, but one thing you learn when you work in the field for a long time is you really can't predict the future. I mean, what my field is most famous for is false predictions. We make false predictions all the time. Machines are going to take over the entire world and do all our homework and all our work for us by 1970 was one of the predictions. Same for 1980. 2000, definitely machines will be everywhere. One of my colleagues actually said that by 2010, we would just be stripped down to our nervous system so that we could work on robots and repair them. But if you look at robotics, there's kind of threats, big threats, to the service industry. That's for sure. There's a burger maker in San Francisco, a bar, and it can make 400 burgers an hour from fresh meat, so it can chop them up. It's not like McDonald's. Chop them up, make them. And the former CEO of McDonald's warned his workers that if you keep complaining about pay, we'll replace you with these robots. And I've no doubt that they will be replaced by them. But, robots are not good at other things like cleaning around the taps. I mean, that's there's a lot of things, the skills that we have that robots can't do. So my last thing was just to say, I was asked to think of 3 fun job titles. You might not like them, that you might do, because if you're thinking about the future of yourself. One is Chief Robot Oiler, because robots will always need to be maintained and oiled. The other is Energy Cyclist, because we could all be employed sitting at cycles all day, generating energy for the robots so that they can do our jobs. That's another possibility. And the last one is Head Rage Against the Machine Expert. Okay, I think that might be possible. Thank you.
My daughter has something in common with Anne-Marie, a woman in tech. Wasn't a child prodigy, but has achieved a career that didn't exist possibly even 10 years ago. There's a profession, website testers. It's a digital skill, and there's a whole profession, and she's one of a few leading women in that profession, of which I'm incredibly proud. You talk about not knowing what your kids might do in the future, Anne, and there is no way any of us can know what our children are going to do unless they've chosen a form of vocational career, doctors, nurses, vets, police, or whatever. for everybody else, this question about digital skills, you just have to choose to do something, and that will enable you to either find something you like or find something you don't like. Would you agree that the next generation, not my generation, your generation, the next generation are likely to have, Anne-Marie, I think you said, 5 to 10 jobs. I've been saying 5 to 10 careers over the course of their lifetime. And there needs to be an openness and a willingness to retrain more often than perhaps we've done in the past.
Yeah, so I'd agree. And I think it's something not just for the next generation, but for the current generation. So I think it's something that they're more used to, and it's part of their social norm more than it is for us. So when you look at YouTubers or vloggers or, the people that they see as famous as well, there's more of a norm at that level. And I think what I always find interesting is sitting in Parliament, sitting in policy debates, when we talk about research that different people are doing, it's people that currently work are going to need to retrain and need to be okay with that and be open to the possibilities and seeing that there are parallels. So, truck drivers is the example we always go to. I don't know how many of us know truck drivers. How easy is it going to be to convince them to say, hey, soon enough, this autonomous vehicle is going to take 3 people, 3 roles are going to be pulled into one. You might be a lead truck driver or you may not be one at all. How do we empower those people and help them to be able to change and not just say, if truck driver then, retrain and do this thing, but show them that it opens up more opportunities rather than restricting them or rather than being a massive inconvenience that now truck driving that they did, their dad did, and their grandfather did, they will no longer be able to do. So I mentioned care is something that's going to grow really widely, and as Anne said, it's the kind of role that women are seen to be doing. And so the other tension you then have is how many truck drivers want to retrain to be care assistants? And that's the debate, that's the question that we're going to have. Sorry.
Yeah. I'm going to put a quick disclaimer before I make my point that I'm an artist and I really like my job, but isn't in a slightly utopian way the problem that maybe we should be shifting the idea that work equals money and it's all about work and we identify through work. That's just because that's what basic capitalism has given us. That isn't it about altering that in a world where we could potentially do that?
I think that's very much the case, and I would love to ask the question for another debate in the future about the gap between being and doing. And maybe all of this is really about, if you link this up to climate change, if you link it up to societal change, are we looking at a new kind of society where we actually have to become less active?
I'll just carry on. I wondered about how we can bring the voice of young people into this debate a bit more. I wanted to hear a bit more about, how do we bring the voice of young people into this debate? And those of you who work with young people, something Anne-Marie and Noel as well, what do they dream of for their future? And I don't just mean what jobs do they want, actually, what do they, how do they envision their life in the future? And how can we support them to achieve those ambitions, whether they're, of which their work is probably only one part of that in the future?
So in terms of bringing young people, so with the Institute for Future of Work, we're working on a youth board. So it's something I've worked with 40,000 girls over the last 5 years and a couple other young people as well in different institutions. So when we're doing our workshops, when we're working on policy, we have mirror workshops with the young people as well to have them impacting, inputting and talking about things.
There will be jobs. We just, it's hard to imagine what they'll be, and we need to reskill people. So the digital skills, well, I'm sure Anne-Marie knows more about which digital skills you need to work alongside technology, but we'll need something. But we've got to be, there are optimists and pessimists in this debate.
I think the interesting thing with the young people that I've seen in the discussions is their views on things like privacy and security alongside altruism. So to answer your question, what do they want? Obviously, not all young people are the same, so it's not a homogeneous group at all, but largely that altruism is what sparks them and what they're interested in. And when we talk about things like climate change, we're talking about climate change kind of almost an arm removed versus, that's something they're living in. So for them, it's how do they feel empowered to make change, and how are they doing change for good?
Hi, so for me, it's the fact that it's not intersubjective enough. So I'm in my second year uni now, going into third, just come out at A-level. I studied in Germany for a bit, like my first few years in school was in Germany, and you know what it is? You're pressed to go specialise from such an early age, And the issue is the jobs that you're specializing for aren't going to exist. And you go to career services and they don't know either. So you go to school, like you come out with what Pythagoras, like the joke's always made, but you don't know how to do your taxes. It's true. So maybe do you think it's about teaching attitude, teaching the love to learn, the love to go to debates like this, to answer your question of how to get people here, is to make them want to be here because they should be here. Like, how do we do that though? Because, I don't know, is there like a generational gap? I don't know how you do it.
I mean, my experience of school was awful. My teachers were so dull, I just couldn't stand them. They bored me to death. And most people will tell you about one teacher who really inspired them. I didn't even have one. They all drove me crazy. But you know, it's not just that. When we're all talking about this new methods and digital and all these things, we don't have any teachers to teach this. I mean, my kids were taught how to switch the computer on and off at the back. I mean, there was nobody to actually understood IT, understood the digital world, and there's so much money in there. If you want a job, you can go out and work, and you're not going to be a teacher.
In defence of teachers,
one final word.
Because I know there'll be teachers here.
Yeah.
It is tough. So it's not just the teachers, it's the system. So you can't just point at one, but also none of this exists in a vacuum.
Yeah.
So it's something that we as a society need to work on our norms, need to work about what we're talking about, where we place value on things, and how we share information. So that then teachers feel empowered to do better, the education system feels empowered to do better, parents feel empowered to do better, employers feel empowered to do better, then you have that knock-on effect. But I wouldn't point just at teachers or the education system, because there's so many things to deal with, from bullying to all kinds, that it's teamwork and cooperation and collaboration.
Please remember some of this, think about it, write some notes, formulate your own theories, lobby people, influence people, and can we have a round of applause for all our presenters, please?